Welcome to our discussion on principles of economics, and we are discussing about cost of production. So, in our last session, we were talking about the economist's role in this domain of production and cost, and then we said that while the engineers are mostly concerned about the technical side of the production, that means what is happening inside that black box, economists are considering only input and output, and they are concerned whether the maximum output we are attaining given the technology and input bundles. And then we said that the maximum attainable output, how do you check? We must ensure that the slope of the isoquant is actually equals to the slope of isocost. That means isocost line must be tangent to the isoquant, and at that point MPL by W should be equals to MPK by R. How we are getting that? Because MPL by MPK is the slope of the isoquant and W by R is the slope of the isocost, and then if you equate, you will get MPL by W equals to MPK by R. What does it mean? It means that the producer is indifferent in allocating the last unit of money, the last rupee, either on capital or on labor, because both are going to give the same amount of output. That is what we discussed. And since rational people think at the margin, we said that when the firm is deciding whether to hire the last unit of labor or not, how the firm is deciding? The firm is deciding whether the W is equals to value of the marginal product of the last unit of labor what the firm is going to hire. So, that means W should be equals to P, which is the price of the output, multiplied by MPL. Together it is called as value of marginal product or VMPL. So, W equals to VMPL. Now, today what we will discuss, we will talk about the cost in detail. Why cost is important? Once again, because we assume that the firm is basically profit maximizer. The firm's objective is to maximize profit, and how do you maximize profit? You have to subtract the total cost minus total revenue. So, that is what we are defining as profit. We assume that the firm's goal is to maximize profit, and profit is total revenue minus total cost. What is total revenue? Total revenue is basically the amount of money that the firm receives by selling the output, which is nothing but P multiplied by Q. And then total cost is the market value of the inputs that the firm is going to use. Okay? Market value of the inputs that the firm will be using. Then costs are also explicit versus implicit. There are two types of cost. Explicit means there is a cash or money going out of the pocket. So, that means it requires an outlay of money from someone's pocket. For example, when I am paying wages or salaries to the laborer, that is basically explicit cost. But suppose in the process of production, I am using my own time, and time also has some value, because that same time I could have worked for someone else's firm and I could have earned that salary. So, that means I am sacrificing my own salary to conduct my business. So, my salary which I am sacrificing, that is not an explicit cost, because there is no outlay happening from my pocket, but I am sacrificing that. So, that is known as implicit cost. So, implicit costs do not require any cash outlay. It is basically the opportunity cost of my time. So, total cost, if you recall one of our 10 principles, that cost of something is what we give up. So, total opportunity cost, when we are calculating, we must calculate the explicit as well as the implicit cost. Okay? we should not consider only the explicit cost, then the cost calculation would be erroneous. There would be mistakes happening in our cost calculation. So, both explicit and implicit costs matter for the firm's decision. Okay, some examples. Let us assume that to start your business you need $100,000 and the interest rate is 5%. So, we are giving two cases. In one case you are you are borrowing the entire money from the bank, and then what is the explicit cost? The interest rate that you are going to pay. If it is 5%, then it would be $5,000 interest rate. Okay. All right. So, explicit cost is only 5,000. And then in case 2, what we are doing, you use $40,000 from your own saving and $60,000 you are borrowing. Now, how do you calculate the total cost here? So, the money what you are borrowing from the bank for which you have to pay interest. So, explicit cost would be 5% of this 60,000, which is $3,000. But there is some implicit cost. Why? Because when you are using your own saving $40,000 for your own business, that means you are sacrificing the interest that you could have earned by keeping the money in bank. So, that is why implicit cost is 5% of the money what you use from your saving, that means 5% of the $40,000, which is $2,000. If you add these two, the total cost is same $5,000 in both the cases. So, it does not matter actually. That is why while calculating total cost, we should not only take the explicit cost, but also consider about the implicit one. And then since there are two types of cost, explicit and implicit, there are two types of profit that we can calculate. One is called economic profit, another one is called accounting profit. Accountants, they generally consider only the explicit cost, because implicit cost is something which is the concept given by the economist. Accountants, they do not bother about the implicit cost because it is difficult to calculate. So, from the total revenue, if you subtract only the explicit cost, you will get accountants profit. That means profit defined by the accountants, and if you subtract total cost implicit versus explicit, then that will give you the economic profit. Okay. So, accounting profit, which is total revenue minus total explicit cost. Okay. Total revenue minus total explicit cost, and then you are having accounting profit. Okay. And how do you define economic profit? Total revenue minus explicit cost minus implicit cost, that means total revenue minus total cost, that is the difference. So, obviously, if we define economic profit and accounting profit in this way, we can easily understand that economic profit will always be lower than accounting profit, right. So, accounting profit ignores implicit cost, that is why it is always higher than the economic profit, very easy to understand. Now, there are some examples. Let us say the equilibrium rent on office space has just increased by $500 per month. So, compare the effect of accounting profit and economic profit. If you rent your office space, you own your office space. Okay. So, what will happen? Explicit cost increases by 500 per month, $500. So, accounting profit and economic profit each will fall by 500 per month, right. So, you rent your office space and you earn this much. Now, when you own your office space, what will happen? Explicit costs do not change, but implicit cost is changing, because when you are owning your space, you are sacrificing the rent what you could have earned by renting your office space to someone else. So, accounting profit does not change, but implicit cost has increased by $500 per month. That is why economic profit falls by $500 per month. Now, the production function we have already discussed yesterday. Let us now quickly look into this once again for a better understanding. So, production function shows the relationship between quantity of input used to produce a good and quantity of output. One thing you have to keep in mind, as I mentioned yesterday, this quantity is a maximum attainable quantity we are talking about, and it can be represented by a table, an equation or a graph. Let us take all of them together. So, there is a farmer whose name is Jack, and Jack grows wheat, okay, and he has 5 acres of land, and he can hire as many workers or laborers as he wants. So, now look at what is happening to the labor and output relationship. So, when output is 0, no labor is hired, no labor is required. When the output is 1000 bushels of wheat, 1 labor is enough. For 1800 bushels, 2. Likewise, as you keep on increasing output, your labor employment or labor requirement is also increasing. If you add these, then you will get a total product curve or production function. Now, look at here, as I have already mentioned, the total product curve is initially increasing and then its slope is falling. That means, it is becoming flatter after a certain point of time. So, what is the meaning of the slope of this production function? So, slope of the production function is basically, if you differentiate the production function, since this is only one input is used here, if you differentiate production function with respect to labor, you will get marginal product of labor. Okay. So, marginal product of labor is basically defining the slope of the production function or total product curve. Okay. So, this is how the marginal product is defined. If you change in output for a 1 unit change in any of your input, here it is labor. So, marginal product is delta Q by delta L, we have already defined in our previous session. Now, look at what is happening to the marginal product. So, initially when the output increases from 0 to 1000, delta Q is 1000 and delta L is 1. So, marginal product is 1000. After that, what is happening? Marginal product is 800, then 600. So, marginal product is continuously falling, because our assumption is that labor exhibits diminishing marginal return. Okay. So, diminishing marginal product explains the slope or shape of the total product curve. So, that is why MPL diminishes as labor increases, and this explains why the production function gets flatter as labor increases. So, you can easily check. Initially it is very steep, and then after some point of time it is becoming flatter. If you compute the slope, you can easily understand. Look at the slope, 1000 and then 800. Okay. All right. look at this 600 and then 400 and then lastly you get 200. Okay. So, MPL is continuously falling, and that explains why the production function gets flatter and flatter. Now, we can take the example of the jack farmer once again, okay, to understand the cost. Now, let us assume that the jack doesn't have his own land. So, jack is basically renting the land from someone else, for which jack must pay $1,000 irrespective of whether he produces wheat or not, irrespective of the amount of wheat that he is going to produce. Okay. So, that is the rent for land which does not depend on the quantity of output produced. But the market wage for the farm worker is, let us say, $2,000 per month, and labor requirement, of course, it depends on what is the quantity that you are going to produce. So, if you calculate the farmer jack's cost, you will get this type of table. So, cost of land is fixed at $1,000. It does not change even though quantity is changing from 0 to 3,000. But cost of labor is actually changing. That is why the cost component which depends on the amount of output is known as variable cost, and the cost component which does not depend on the quantity of output produced is known as fixed cost. Okay. So, total cost is the summation of these two, and then this is what is happening. Okay. So, this is the total cost. So, total cost curve, if you want to plot it, you see what is happening. So, total cost is continuously increasing. The shape of the total cost curve is just opposite to the shape of the production function. If you understand the production function, you can easily understand why the total cost is increasing in an increasing rate, because production function becomes flatter and flatter. So, that means if you keep on hiring labor, that labor is contributing less and less to the output. So, obviously, if the labor is going to contribute less on your output, what will happen to your total cost? Your total cost will increase, na, because you are not getting enough return from there. So, you need more and more labor to produce same amount of output, no. So, that is why total cost is increasing as you keep on producing more and more output, because more labor is required, because labor will show diminishing marginal product, diminishing return. So, diminishing marginal product means if you keep on increasing the size of your production, you need to hire more and more labor, and that is explaining the shape of the total cost curve. Now, you look at the total cost curve, it does not change from 0, it starts with some intercept. Why this is so? Because even though your production is 0, you must incur some cost. What is that cost? As I told you already, whether you produce or not produce, you must pay the rent for the land, and that rent is actually the fixed cost, which explains this particular intercept. So, total cost curve will always have some intercept because of the fixed cost. Now, talk about marginal cost. Again, marginal means, like the way we define marginal product, same analogy you can apply to get the concept of marginal cost, change in total cost due to change in 1 unit of output. Now, again if you plot the total cost, you will get the marginal cost. Look at this, marginal cost is 2 rupees to start with, and then it is 2.5, 3, 5, 10. So, marginal cost is increasing at an increasing rate. Look at this. So, it is increasing slowly and then it becomes very steep, right. Sometimes marginal cost may have a component which will show initially it is falling and then only it is increasing. So, we will explain that with the help of these two components. Let us try to understand fixed and variable cost. We have already explained earlier. Fixed cost means it does not vary. Fixed costs do not vary with the quantity of output produced. So, for farmer Jack it is $1,000 irrespective of his production of wheat. And other example, we can take the cost of equipment. If you buy or hire an equipment, even if you do not produce, you must pay the rent. Even if you do not produce anything, you must pay rent for the loan that you have taken from the bank. And variable cost actually vary with the amount of output. In this case, it is the cost of labor. So, variable cost is wages he pays to the workers, very simple. And other examples are cost of materials. Okay. So, total cost is then fixed cost versus fixed cost plus variable cost. These are the two components of the total cost. So, we can take another example. Let us say this is the fixed cost amount, $100. So, fixed, it does not change across the level of output. What is the variable cost? Look at this variable. So, this is your variable cost. Look, variable cost starts from the origin 0. So, that means when you are not producing anything, you are not incurring any variable cost. Very simple to understand. No production means no requirement to hire any labor. So, if you plot the total cost curve, it will look like the total variable cost only, just only difference is that it will start with an intercept. This is the intercept. Okay. Now, look at the marginal cost, change in total cost due to change in output. So, usually MC rises as Q rises due to diminishing marginal product, very easy to understand. Sometimes MC falls because initially it may so happen that as you increase your output or increase the size of your scale of production, cost of production goes down. That may explain the downward sloping portion of the MC to start with. In this particular case, look at, to start with the MC is 70, then 50, then 40. After that again it is increasing from 50, 70, 100 and 40. So, look at this. So, there is a downward sloping portion. During this portion, firm may experience some economies of scale. That means, as you increasing the scale of your production, your cost is actually falling. Okay. That might be also another case of this marginal cost curve to have U-shaped. Now, average fixed cost, obviously if fixed cost is constant, then what will happen to the average fixed cost? Average fixed cost definitely it will keep on falling. As you increase your output, it will keep on falling, because that is total cost by output, total fixed cost, and fixed cost is fixed. So, fixed cost will always fall as you keep on increasing the size of your production. That is what I wanted to mean. Look at the shape, continuously falling, okay, average fixed cost. What about average variable cost? So, average variable cost is a variable cost divided by the output, very easy to understand. So, VC by Q, right. Now, that is what it may also go down initially, and then it eventually it may rise because of this diminishing marginal product. This is the average variable cost. Initially it is falling. Initially, as you increase the scale size, you may experience some kind of economies of scale. That is why average variable cost is falling. After that it is increasing. So, now what is average total cost? That means total cost divided by output, and that is also. So, that means if you divide total cost by output, you will get average total cost, which is the summation of AFC and AVC. So, AFC will keep on falling, AVC will fall and then increase. So, that means what will happen to the ATC? It depends on the relative strength of these two. That is why ATC also initially it falls, because both are falling. After some point of time AVC will rise, but AFC will fall. So, if the increase in AVC is more than fall in AFC, that will explain the upward sloping portion of ATC. Very easy to understand. Look at this. So, initially both of them are falling, after that ATC is increasing because AVC is also increasing, but AFC is continuously falling, and this is marginal cost, initially falling and then increasing. We have a fantastic relationship between, this is again fixed cost, variable cost in a tabular format. You can easily calculate this. So, I am not going to discuss in detail about this. Right. This is the relationship, you have to fill this up. This is very important, the relationship between ATC and MC. Okay. This relationship is very important. So, please pay your attention to this. What is the relationship between average total cost and marginal cost? So, as long as, look at this, when MC is less than ATC, so that means this is the range. When MC is less than ATC, what is happening to ATC? ATC is falling. Look at this. In this range, MC is lower than ATC, that is why ATC is falling. And then when MC is greater than ATC, ATC is rising. Now, you can easily understand this scenario if you compare ATC with your CGPA and MC with your GPA. You all know what is GPA and what is CGPA. Grade point average means what is the average grade in a particular semester, and cumulative grade point average, that means your average grade for all the semesters previously you have taken, including this one. So, it is very easy to understand, if you contribute less in a particular semester, then obviously your CGPA will go down. If you contribute less in a particular semester, CGPA will go down. So, your contribution in a particular semester, GPA must be higher than the CGPA then only it will rise. So, with this example you can easily understand the difference between the relationship between MC and ATC. When MC is greater than ATC means your GPA is higher than CGPA and CGPA will go up. Okay? CGPA will go up. So, that is one thing you have to keep in mind. So, you need to contribute more and more in successive semesters, so that you can get upward rising CGPA. If you contribute less and less, your CGPA will go down. That is exactly happening in the context of MC and ATC. At one point they are equal. When MC curve crosses ATC at ATC curve's minimum point, and then it is rising. So, this is the relationship. Okay. As long as MC is lower than ATC, ATC is falling. When MC is greater than ATC, ATC is rising, and MC intersects ATC at its minimum point.